Young Avengers Volume 1. This encompasses the first 6 issues that came out from the Young Avengers and a Young Avengers special issue that came out. These issues were written and drawn by Heinberg and Cheung. The storyline was titled Sidekicks, which is ironic being that there aren't very many sidekicks in the Marvel Universe. In fact, there pretty much aren't any. If you're a superhero in the Marvel Universe, you're just pretty much a superhero despite your age. If you're a teenager, you're still a superhero. In most other comic book universes, sidekicks are clearly defined and they're everywhere. Marvel, though, is much different. This first volume introduces us to the first 6 Young Avengers. This consists of Iron Lad, Patriot, Hulkling, Asgardian, Stature, and Hawkeye. By the end of the first volume, their costumes are changed up and Asgardian changes his name to Wiccan. He changes his name from Asgardian to Wiccan to avoid some tabloid jokes being that he was in a relationship with Hulkling. When we start into the series, it's much different from a lot of other team-ups we've seen in other series. The biggest thing is that they're already a team. Usually we see where one character is having problems taking down a villain and someone else is helping him out, and they turn out to be a big team-up where they have to join together to fight bigger causes. But in this instance, they're already a team, and we find out how they teamed up through flashbacks throughout the next few issues. So already Heinberg changes up the formula about how teams are supposed to be formed, which is great. The story focuses on the core member that started the Young Avengers, which happens to be Iron Lad, who is also a young version of King the Conqueror. King the Conqueror is a time-traveling supervillain that's been causing a lot of problems with the Avengers for a decade. King the Conqueror had talked to his younger self, and his younger self, who was still a good guy and innocent at this point, went back in time, and this is where he formed the current Young Avengers. The whole story involves a lot of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff that took place. Some alternate versions of the universe also was put in play as well. Always whenever time is played around with, something happens. It is usually pretty bad, so they tried to make sure everything was fixed as best as they possibly could. King the Conqueror is known for going back in time and messing with it constantly. I don't want to give any more spoilers other than that, but it is a really nice introduction to the characters. It's also a nice way of showing a new team-up of teenage superheroes. What's even better, though, is that the team is all made up of quote-unquote fanboys, which is great because it's like a lot of people out there who read comic books, they are fanboys themselves. The story also doesn't go too deeply into their individual backgrounds yet. That's something that's explored later on in future issues. We get some petty squabbling, but also a lot of friendly banter between a lot of the characters. Hawkeye and Patriot already from the very beginning seem as though they don't like each other too much, but we know that's going to stem into something else later. Hulkling and Asgardian, who are emulating the Hulk and Thor, have a much different relationship than their adult counterparts. In fact, they're in a relationship. They hint at it throughout the first few issues, but then they state it pretty obviously near the end of the first volume. And it's handled excellently. They don't really have to state it and put it out there. They just say that these guys are in a relationship, which is awesome. This first series won a GLAAD award for being an outstanding comic book series. It is incredibly good. The first volume really hooks you in. We get a lot of other superheroes that make appearances in this first volume, including Captain America, Iron Man, and Jewel, also known as Jessica Jones. They play the very stereotypical adults who don't want teenagers to go out and risk their lives, even if they do have superpowers. But being teenagers who don't really listen to adults too much, they go off and still do their own thing, regardless of what the adults say. One of the things I really like about this series is that even though each of the young characters are emulated after their adult counterparts, each of them have their own unique abilities and their own unique origins. Patriot, who's Elijah Bradley, is the grandson to Isaiah Bradley. His origin is explained later on, but at the beginning we're led to believe that he possibly has the super soldier serum in his blood. Asgardian is William Kaplan, who has at first electrical abilities and he can fly. Later on that's expanded on and is talked about in further detail. Theodore Altman is a shapeshifter and he also has super strength. His origin is explained in the next volume. Hawkeye is Kate Bishop. She doesn't have any superpowers, but she is an incredibly good marksman. She gets much better too as the series progresses. Finally, Stature, that's Cassandra Lane. She's the daughter of the Ant-Man, Scott Lang. But unlike Scott, she doesn't need any helmet or suit to make herself shrink or grow. She's been stealing Pym particles her entire life, and that's caused some sort of mutation in her blood. They don't say mutation, but that is exactly what it is. Cheung's artwork in this is insanely awesome. His artwork really paired well with Heinberg's writing, and together the story was so incredibly well done. When everything is said and done at the end of the first volume, you really get a good feel for the characters. You also feel as though they are a cohesive team. Some characters and other teams, when you read up on them, they don't feel as though they like each other very much. This is much different. It almost feels like they're a family. So in conclusion, I gotta say this first storyline was great. The artwork was good. The story was very cohesive. I love the characters. characters a lot. I highly recommend anyone out there to read at least the first few issues. If you don't like it, then you wouldn't continue on reading on the next volume. But that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching me in this comic book review, and I will join you in another one very soon. Peace.